And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. Friedrich Nietzsche. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jason Lundgren. I'm your host here at Secrets of Saturn. Trying something a little different tonight, we're going to have a roundtable discussion on light versus dark. With me tonight is Russell Blattberg, Scott Faust, and Nick Sherman. Good evening, gentlemen.
What's up, Jason?
Good evening.
So,
Hi there.
Who would like to begin?
Me.
All right, Russell. Why choose the light over the darkness?
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, what do you really win by selling out your own species and destroying your own planet?
Well, let's expand on that.
Okay.
What do you mean by selling out your entire species?
Well, the fact of the matter is that, in my opinion, at the highest levels, this conspiracy is it's non-human. It's really alien, and basically, regardless of whether you're American or Asian or whatever, we're all human beings, and we all share this planet, and we all have that in common. And now, if you're going to literally, let's say you take a job as a chemtrail pilot, and you're literally poisoning your own neighborhood for a buck, and and when you get down from your plane, you're going to have those heavy metals being sprayed on you, so you're really just fucking yourself over, and you're fucking your kids over, and you're fucking the next. Sorry, you said not too much language, but it's true. It just angers me. You're screwing over not only yourself and your family and the future generations, but you're ruining it for everybody. All for what? So you can have temporarily a little bit more power in a slavery system. It's there doesn't need to be a slavery system at all if everyone would just be like, oh, this is stupid. Let's
cite a good example of that. For instance, the BP spill in Louisiana.
Oh God. Who wins? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I don't think that area will ever be the same. And goodness only knows if they even fixed that properly.
Or anything. I mean, if you look at Hurricane Katrina or Fukushima. Fukushima is probably maybe the most pertinent example of everyone losing.
Yes, because it's still an ongoing problem.
Oh, yeah.
Scott, you got something to add to that?
Yeah, I wish that my answer sounded so sweet, but the truth for me, it comes down to finances, man. If somebody came to me and said, here's $1 billion, we want you on board, that would solve all my problems, and I'd be in. I was born into this, I was born to have to fight for the light side because it's my rights that are being taken away. I'm in a position where the things that are being done affect me and mine, and I'm not so foolish to believe that if I was offered billions of dollars and if you put on the other side of the fence, I wouldn't jump ship with this whole thing. And I think that's why you choose light. It's because you're the one that's taking it from behind. You're the one that's being poisoned. You're the one that can't afford to pay your rent, and you're the one that the cops are beating your face in on the side of the road. That's why I choose light over dark. Follow the money, man.
Very good. Nick, what are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are that we're, interestingly enough, in a transition to be the first generation in history to shed the shackles of a medieval pyramid structure, hierarchical, basically the warlords of history. We're going to be the first population that has an opportunity to not be subservient to that elite status, that social order. And I guess the elite, power elite today consider themselves the
feudal lords.
Lineage of,
well, they
think they go back to Ramses.
Right.
Right.
I was going to say they kind of think of themselves as gods.
Yes,
gods.
they do.
the pharaohs did. They considered themselves the lineage of the pharaohs. So
God's in a jar.
And that.
Now, here's the thing about what you're saying. Yeah, we fought our way out of a feudal system, but they are actually trying to create a neo-feudalism system because they're destroying the economies, making everything more and more expensive, and they're shrinking the gap between the rich and the poor. Well, that's pretty much the same thing as serfs on the land. You can barely afford to feed yourself and take care of yourself. Look at how expensive it is just to buy real food versus, the $+ menu at McDonald's.
Well, but even the dollar plus. Yeah, we were just talking about that. Yeah, I mean, you go and take your family out to McDonald's, you might spend $30. It's not really that cheap anymore, is it?
No.
Well, but it's not.
And it's not nutritious either.
No.
It's gotten cheaper to produce, in fact. Actually, it's the value of food is reduced because we've gotten so much more efficient at producing it. It just seems more expensive because we're measuring it in dollars.
And the dollar is always decreasing in value as well because of quantitative easing and massive inflation due to what the Federal Reserve does with its little games.
Well, yeah, because it's a global Ponzi scheme, and as long as you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, somebody's going to get screwed, and it's probably Jason and Nick and Scott and Russell.
That's right.
I never pay Paul.
Maybe not Scott. It looks like we're about to lose Scott to the other side.
As soon as somebody offers him a better deal, maybe, but I don't think that's ever going to happen, so we don't have to worry about that.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think they really want anyone else on their side anymore. I think they've kind of got what they want figured out.
Well, yeah, now it's mostly just about eliminating us.
Which indeed they are slowly doing. Let's name off a few ways.
Speeding up. Yeah, I mean, well, Fukushima is obviously a huge one. The whole Pacific Ocean is virtually dead or radiated to the point where you don't really want to eat anything out of it, or you can't know if it's safe.
Interesting how it's not even listed in the media very much anymore.
Yeah, why would we talk about the biggest global disaster ever? Because,
well, it's not about football, and Justin Bieber wasn't there.
Well, what about twerking and Kim Kardashian's fucking butt or something? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And, I mean, the chemtrails and the fluoride and the vaccinations and the GMO food. And, well, I mean, one of the things Nick and I were talking about a little earlier is how literally, the trees are virtually the lungs of the planet. And about 70% of the Amazon is destroyed. And the air quality in the cities is so bad these days. I mean, you can see the smog in a lot of places. You go to China.
You've been able to see it for decades. I remember seeing it ages ago.
Yeah, I used to live in Manila, and it's like literally the world's most populated city, and it's incredibly polluted. And you go to LA, and now LA is turning into like, it's kind of Manila-esque. It's like only a couple years behind, and a lot of places in China, it's so horrible.
Is LA getting the greenish smog that you can see hanging like on New York? I remember going to Manhattan a lot, and you can literally see in the early mornings just this green, nasty. I mean, it's beyond a haze. It's a cloud of blah.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, and almost like when you're in it, you kind of like forget about it. But it's only when you like leave or you're coming back into it, you can just see it. It's like this giant ball. It's disgusting. And yeah, I mean, literally, the levels of oxygen now, especially in the cities, are reaching dangerously low levels, like 15 to 17%. Where people are getting literally brain damage because they're not able to get enough oxygen. Another part of the problem is like, you have literally 1% of the United States population is imprisoned, and 70% of those people are nonviolent drug offenders. You have 1 in 4 Americans have been in a jail cell at some point in their life, that's staggering.
Now let's talk about that a moment, because that's actually a very staggering fact. How did you describe it?
Nonviolent drug offenders.
Nonviolent drug offenders. Basically, guys smoking pot, right?
More or less. Or yeah, I mean, you do some heroin or whatever. I mean, that's bad, but yeah,
they go to prison, and then it's like a school to become a real criminal, not just some ding-dong using drugs.
Right.
And they come out with this bad attitude, and they've learned things that they wouldn't have learned anywhere else.
Yeah, and that's not counting like the people who are in the mental hospitals or all the people who are homeless. The homeless population in LA is about 3% of the population. That's huge. And then, literally about a quarter of the people in the United States are on some form of welfare, whether it's food stamps or disability or whatever it is. 1/3 of the jobs are government jobs. The rate of unemployment is fast approaching 25%.
To speak to the government jobs, the classes that now get taught, you can get degrees in things such as security work for the government.
Yeah, or you can be a
Homeland Security.
Spy on your fellow Americans or work for FEMA or... Yeah, it's a mess.
Well, I don't know about anyone else, but that sounds awfully Nazi Germany to me.
What, you don't like the Gestapo?
Do we have a Gestapo?
Well, pretty much.
I think it's definitely leaning in that direction.
Well, the thing is, I mean, you said you wanted to follow up or whatever on what happened to me, and we talked about this in the prior show. But yeah, literally one day I was just on my computer, and I had the cops show up at my door, and they're like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean? That's nothing. I'm hanging out at my house. What's going on with you, you fucks?" Sorry again. And they were like, they literally, one of the first things they said is like, "We heard you were posting some stuff on Facebook." Or like, and I didn't even know like what they were talking about. But I thought like literally it was like that was it. It was just like like somebody like reported me and that was it. And it turned out that it was kind of above and beyond that. And we went into that in the prior show. But yeah, literally in Nazi Germany, you could be arrested for thinking un-German thoughts. And we're getting to that point. You have it in the airports and in all like the metropolitan stations, or whether it's bus or train, you have propaganda for the TSA, which is basically if you see something, say something, please rat on your fellow Americans.
Exactly.
Big Brother is watching.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And they've told us that the NSA is spying on us with everything we do. Literally, there are traffic cameras at every single light intersection now. That just popped up in the last couple of years, and no one really protested that or even, cares. Yeah, I mean, it seems like the grid is pretty much set up.
It's closing in on us.
It is. And the fact of the matter is what happened to me and what we were kind of talking about, again, was that basically, first of all, with this whole thing that pretty much anybody can kind of say anything and then the police can act on like this alleged rumor and you're pretty much guilty until proven innocent and you can get arrested or ultimately put in a psychiatric facility like a mental hospital totally against your will, and they can just kind of keep you for a while, and they can in theory, they can definitely force you to take drugs. And yeah, I mean, basically, when you end up in one of those places, I mean, you may walk in voluntarily or you may for whatever reason, but the thing is that ultimately they can involuntarily commit you. And one of the things that I learned, and this is one of the things that this is happening with a lot of older people, is one of the things they can do is like, let's say you're like an old person, and rather than putting you in a senior citizens home, they can just like lock you up in a mental hospital. And what they can do is they can take it's called conservatorship of your money, where basically they can literally just take all your money, and that's legal.
Is that basically acting as a power of attorney?
Yeah.
That's appalling.
Yeah. It is. And the thing is that basically when you're in these places, you have no rights. They can, just based on the doctor's diagnosis of you, they can, and the doctor can say whatever they want. And you have to keep in mind that everything is skewed because they're getting paid. This is profitable for them to do this.
They're getting paid and they make money from the drug companies too. I mean,
right,
everybody knows why they're pushing all the drugs, especially on kids.
Well, sure, and
all these diagnoses,
right?
There's something wrong with your kid. Here, put him on this.
It's disgusting. And the thing is, the biggest donator at the private clinic that I was at was Goldman Sachs, and so that should tell you something.
That tells me a lot.
Yeah, well, literally, what these places they can do is at least the state hospitals or whatever, they can ultimately petition the court to force you to take medication, or if you won't take it. I mean, you're forced to take it, but if you won't take it orally, they'll hold you down and inject it into you. And literally, they can just take your, quote, liberty away, on the basis that it's for your own well-being and protection because you're, quote, a danger to yourself or others, or that you're incapable of taking care of yourself, like you're like some kind of like a vegetable, or you're mentally deficient, basically.
You're a ward of the state.
That's exactly what it is, and basically, it's under pretty much the law that like the state is like the king, or it's like your father, and they know what's best for you, and yeah, it's really scary, and they can just keep you in there for forever.
Russell, that sounds like very un-German thoughts.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm not a good American. Like it's like George Carlin said. He said, "I'm not a very good American because I like to form my own opinion. I don't just roll over on command."
What were you saying, Scott?
Goldman Sachs. I saw a clip where President Reagan is giving a speech, and the CEO from Goldman Sachs is there, and he didn't think you could hear him on the mic, but he tells Reagan, "Wrap it up," and he walks away, and Reagan ends his speech.
Well, it kind of tells you who's in charge, right?
Yeah, how about it? Like if I ever saw something, that made it obvious, like you can't deny that's just strange, to say the least.
Indeed.
If you're one of the normies.
So,
Russell, that's pretty incredible. I mean, it's almost like its own form of suspension of habeas corpus and doing extraordinary rendition, taking somebody out of their domestic place and taking them off to some dark black site where they can, whether it be on a ship or in Guantanamo or out in Abu Ghraib or your local mental institution. I mean, it seems like getting rolling out FEMA camps from this point is just an extension of their model that they've imported from over shores.
Yeah, they don't even need a warrant.
They don't need anything now. Between the Patriot Act and the NDAA, they can pretty much point the finger and go, "Hey, we suspect you of terrorism," and all of a sudden, your precious rights are gone. You're no longer anything. They can take you away, and that's that.
And the thing is, more and more and more, what they're doing is they're monitoring the social media sites, and literally, I mean, all of us, just based on what we're posting and sharing on Facebook or what things we said, that's grounds for X.
So that brings me to a pretty good question, I think. So Jason and Russell, I know both of you are really vocal, much more than myself, as far as putting new content out there for the world. And so why do you think people like myself who just sort of do it amateurly shouldn't be afraid of getting put on a list? And, there is a chilling effect since we're all so well aware now about the NSA tracking what we post. I mean, why shouldn't we have that chilling effect control our decision making?
Well, the fact of the matter is that if you do nothing in the face of oppression, you've literally chosen the side of the oppressor, and
the amount of tyranny you'll live under is the amount you allow.
That's exactly right. It reminds me of a quote from Pastor Martin Niemöller, who was a pastor in Nazi Germany, where basically it's the famous quote, they came for, the trade unionists or the socialists or whatever, and I wasn't one of them, and so I didn't speak out. And then they came for the Jews, and I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't speak out. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Right. And, fortunately, when I got put in the mental hospital, I was in touch with a lot of people on the outside who were advocating for me and giving me good information and helping me. Because if you're isolated and you have no one who knows where you are or who you are, or no one to help you, or no one who has the knowledge to help you, or a lot of the time people, they think that you should be in there. That was the whole thing with my mom. I got out and she was like, "Wow, they really dropped the ball on that one." And I'm like, "Fuck you, Mom." Sorry again.
I'll be honest with you, Russell. When you contacted me, I half wondered if I was going to be taking a trip to Texas to come grab you.
Yeah, scary, man.
Because I really was under the impression, like, wow, he's being held against his will. I guess I'm taking a drive. I'm only one state over right now, so.
Well, and, I appreciate that you'd be willing to do that, because literally the balance of everyone's life is hanging by a thread. It's like the sword of Damocles hanging over everybody, and that's there's this imminent threat, and they use that against people. But at the same time, they're going to do all this stuff anyway, and it's already too late. If you even have these thoughts, it's like in 1984, Eric Blair, George Orwell basically laid out this model where, even if you are thinking thoughts against the government, well, they basically have the thought police, to come and take you away, and they have it's like the two-way TV where the TV's always on, and then it's always watching you.
The telescreens in every home and out in the streets, which they have in London, by the way, and just it's all for control. Like, you literally cannot get any peace. You cannot get away. We control you.
Right, and then they change the whole language and change the whole history, and they're constantly at war. And
it's interesting you said about the language. In 1984, the whole point behind the Newspeak, as they called it, was that they were trying to chop the language down little by little, more and more as years go by, so that you could no longer have the capability to communicate with each other, to even have revolutionary thoughts.
LOL, Jason.
LOL, exactly. You know exactly where I'm going with that. The dumbing down of the society.
The music today with the stuff that Snoop Dogg says, and it's just, you watch the way that this younger generation that listen to that spells, and they can't form sentences. Like, I could see a bunch of misspellings and stuff, but I've been in groups where it's not even me that gets the first shot in, but people telling them, like, listen, why don't you sit down and gather your thoughts, because what you just typed doesn't make any sense. Like, it's already happening. And as far as, the two-way TV, we got that. I'm sitting in front of a little video box here that has a camera built into it that maybe somebody's watching me.
Right.
It's been on record since 1996, the Telecommunications Act, that there's backdoors built into everything. Anything mainstream, anything commercial, any kind of commercial product, it has been on record. You can go look it up, that there's two-way streets built into these things.
Yeah, well, I worked for Aaron's, man, and the rent-to-own outfit, and they're being sued because they had devices inside of their computers so that they could see where their computer was at and stuff in order to go and pick it up if they needed to, if somebody was trying to steal it. And they're getting sued because people were, watching girls through it and stuff like invading their privacy. And so, this is like a real life example that you could look at it being abused, by one corporation. And, like how far down does that rabbit hole go?
Well, I think it goes pretty far. Jason and I were talking on our last show, and one of the things one of my friends told me is that basically they did a study of 3,000 people, and it turned out of those 3,000 that 1,000 of them were already had RFIDs in them.
Did you know what method that they had gotten administered into their bodies?
She was saying that a lot of them were through fillings, and then also the vaccinations.
Yep, that's the two things I'd heard too.
Yeah.
That's just terrifying.
It is scary.
So, do you think they're really going to hook it up to people's finances and have that be the new credit card chip?
Absolutely.
Well, it's going to be done through software. The chip is just the identifier of who you are. Basically, your social security number. That'll be tied into the databases, and the database will have all of your information. So basically, they scan your chip, and then it links up to the network. Basically the cloud, the whole huge thing with the cloud that's coming about right now. That's basically what it's going to be. All that data is going to be out there for any official to want to access who you are. And it's all going to be tied to there. And if you're naughty, this is the big thing. If you're naughty, if you thought un-German thoughts, they can switch it off.
Right. And, sorry, I know we all want to talk right now, but, well, in Nazi Germany, they literally tattooed, I almost want to say the slaves, they tattooed prisoners in the concentration camps with a number, and virtually the other day I was driving with my friend, and I saw they're doing this new TV show where basically they're saying like, oh, human beings are commodities, and because like, oh, I wish I could remember exactly what it was, but it literally had a picture of a baby with a barcode on the feet, and yeah, it's like, you're just gonna have your barcode, and you just scan your barcode, and it's connected to your chip, and yeah, it's all digital.
Yeah, I want to touch you. You brought up concentration camps. This is one thing. I just want to get this out because I thought of it before, too. When you said FEMA camps, and people seem to not want to believe that these can be used to put prisoners in. Like, they'll be like, oh, that's not what they're for. But in World War II, we were sticking Japanese Americans into camps. Like, you think that just because we'll stick, hurricane victims in them, that when it comes time, we're not going to put our own people into these things? That drives me crazy that people could deny something that has already happened here.
The way that people think these days, they're so they're such TV heads, as I like to call them. They just think that it's all science fiction. It's all not real. But they forget that on September 11th, 2001, over 3,000 people did indeed die.
Yep. Well, and they're not interested in the fact that they bought like 30,000 guillotines for these camps, that the Department of Homeland Security has bought something like 2 billion rounds of hollow point ammunition. And again, hollow point is it's for civilians because it's not it won't go through Kevlar, so it's not for military. It's for to be used on civilians.
It's to blow very large holes in people.
Yeah, and the thing is that these camps are called enemy prisoner of war camps. I was talking with Nick a little bit earlier about one of my, I guess it's kind of my friend. His name is George Green. Do you guys know who George Green is?
I do.
Okay. Do you know, Scott?
No. The name sounds familiar, but...
Well, just to give the listening audience the benefit of the doubt here, basically, George Green was a banker who rose within the ranks of the New World Order. He was actually not a bad guy, but he just was very successful and was kind of willing to do...
He was a businessman.
Yeah, he was a businessman. Exactly right. Not an evil guy, but just willing to do whatever. And pretty much they wanted to make him the finance chairman for Jimmy Carter. And he was talking with Paul Volcker, and he said, well, who's going to be the president, if you want me to be finance chairman for him? And he said, Jimmy Carter. And he's like, oh, who's that? And he's like, oh, he's this Democratic congressman. And he said, well, I vote Republican. And Paul laughed. He said, well, son, we own them both. It doesn't make a difference. And he said, oh, okay. And then, and basically, he was in a meeting with all these guys, and they sat him down with Ted Kennedy, and he was telling him what the job basically entailed, and he was saying, well, pretty much, we're going to send you to all the Democratic national conventions, and you're going to go and you're going to raise money for us because you're real good with money, and you're going to meet a real bunch of foxy ladies. It's going to be great. And then just then, George's daughter walks into the room, and Ted Kennedy was like, wow, I want to go to bed with that. And he said, well, Ted, that's my daughter. And he said, I don't care.
Oh, and she was 14.
Yeah, he said, Ted, she's 14. And he said, so? And George was kind of, he was like aghast. And so he said he went into the other room, and he said he saw a box of white powder and all these, seemed like almost like laboratory equipment, and there was a maid in there, and he asked her what it was, and she said, oh, that's freebase equipment, because they were freebasing coke and meth. And he said after that he didn't want to be a part of it, but basically he said because he kind of was still, even though he turned down that job, he was still somewhat connected with these guys, and in I believe it was 1991, he was asked to build, quote, an enemy prisoner of war camp in downtown Las Vegas. And he turned it down, but he talked to his friend Ted Gerson, who is now, he was head of the FBI at the time, and now he's, not head of the FBI anymore. But basically he said, yeah, they're building these all over the country, and they've been building them for the last 30 years. And in addition to all these FEMA camps, or quote, the enemy prisoner of war camps, they literally have been building these things called DUMBs, which are the deep underground military bases for, again, similar, 30, 40, 50 years. And the fact of the matter is that the elite, they're radiating the surface of the planet to the point where it's becoming unlivable. And that's why there's such a push to go to the moon and to go to Mars and to kind of colonize different planets, and the push to go underground, because they have no problem killing off, they want to kill off, according to the Georgia Guidestones, they want to kill off 90 to 95% of the population, and, leave the rest basically as drones, with the transhumanism, and this is the whole thing where it's going with the chip and the nanotechnology. That's another really big issue, because they're spraying nanotechnology in the chemtrails, and there's some evidence to suggest that it's in some of the food and stuff like that as well.
There's talk that it's a a binary weapon that they're spraying that, and then when they're ready to do the next stage of it, they can get the other part out that will trigger whatever effect it is that they want. Usually when I'm explaining a lot of this stuff to people, and you kind of hit on all of that, I always start with like, okay, there's two words I need you to understand here: eugenics and transhumanism. The eugenics is for us, and the transhumanism is for them. And if you want to know about eugenics, all you got to do is start looking back to the early 20th century with Margaret Sanger and that whole community of people that were pretty much absolute monsters.
Nazi Germany.
And then Adolf Hitler got his ideas from Margaret Sanger. He blatantly says that, and they used to give awards to each other and compliment each other on what they were doing. So he got all those ideas from Americans, and he just implemented it. And that's what these elite people want to do to us on a massive scale. Now, on the other end is transhumanism, which is what they are after for themselves, where they believe they want to merge with machines and become gods themselves. Not that they believe in a god so much as they want to become God.
Yeah, check this out. If you Google optimum population trust, you can actually find the organization that a lot of like highly successful politicians belong to.
You on the show?
You know.
So when? Like another 20 to 30 minutes.
You're gonna have to edit that out.
Yeah, I'll edit that out.
So,
yeah.
Russell commented on, the subterranean military bases, which brought up to me what the hollow earth concepts. You know how supposedly the Nazis escaped to, the poles and got into the inside of the earth where there's the new Atlantis or whatnot. You guys have any position on that?
I've heard all that before. My problem with a lot of those more esoteric concepts is there's no proof. There's a lot of wild theories that are very interesting, but documented proof is scarce, to say the least.
I wonder if a lot of that is just disinformation meant to
distract us,
discredit a lot of discredit a lot of the real claims. Like the people are starting to actually believe in this, and you throw in like, here a reptilian shapeshifter theory, and here's an underground hollowed earth theory, and there's no proof. And a lot of people look at that and be like, that's just absolutely insane. So then, not following, the actual rules of logic, they just dismiss both. You get caught up in the kind of thinking that's just.
What you're getting at is basically they'll mix Bigfoot with black helicopters. Well, I've seen black helicopters. They're unmarked military planes or helicopters or vehicles even. I've seen all that because they're always moving troops and supplies around. And those things are real. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Really. I'm sorry?
Yeah, have you ever seen any of the videos of where they're shipping the tanks on the train lines?
I've seen pictures of it, yes.
Yeah, or they also have boxcars that have something like 64 shackles per car.
I've heard about that. I talk to people all over the world now, and I'm friends with several thousand people on Facebook through all the networking I've done, just trying to meet other people who are awake to some degree or another. And people tell me things like, I'm from this little town. What on earth is the police force here doing getting this giant military vehicle that was in Iraq? What do they need it for?
The MRAPs.
For example, but and then they're dressing in these giant stormtrooper outfits and everything, and they don't look like Andy Griffith anymore. They're dressed head to toe, ready in battle gear. It's just completely different. And what is all this stuff for? It's for us.
Yeah, exactly. It's that they're loaded up with the SS uniforms and the gas masks and everything. And it's totally. It's totally apparent, in the media and in the movies and in the music and in the video games. Like, for example, there's a new Wolfenstein game, which I don't even know what the original one was about, but I'm pretty sure it's about Nazis, something to do with Nazis, like fighting Nazis, or you're playing as a Nazi. I don't even know. I don't know that. I'm not that into that kind of stuff. But literally, the subtitle for the game is called The New Order, and on the picture of the box for the game, it was just literally it's all these guys with military helmets, and they're all dressed in all black, and they have glowing red eyes and gas masks on, just like Nazi Germany.
So pretty much it's another example of the elite shoving their ideals in our face.
Absolutely.
Just like all the music videos, and just the symbolism is everywhere. They're telling us what they're doing.
How about Weird Al, man? What do you think of the Weird Al song Foil?
Well, you know how mainstream, I mean, to say the least, this tells you how mainstream that these concepts have become if Weird Al's making a song about it. Because he only parodies things that are massively mainstream so that people know what it is he's making fun of. So if this man is making a huge joke out of this, God only knows what other may or may not be behind it, but just to say that alone means that it's that mainstream. He says tinfoil hat, black helicopters, New World Order. People know what... Right, the Illuminati, and people know what it's about. Now, again, he lumped a bunch of stuff together like so frequently does. I usually call it the Bigfoot and black helicopters thing. It's like, let's just put all those things together and make it sound ludicrous.
Right, with the moon landing.
With the moon landing, right. And a lot of those theories have certain valid points, and then there's other things that aren't very valid. But the whole idea is they ridicule everything so that the average person who might just be taking a cursory glance at it just thinks, well, that's Looney Tunes stuff.
So I think that's the argument against it. So going around, I mean, do we all think it's a net positive, that foil video, or net negative?
Negative.
Why negative?
Well, my take on it is that anything that puts information out there and gets people looking at things can't be a bad thing.
Right. So, Jason, you say it's a net positive.
I think it is. I have no idea what his true intention is. I mean, Weird Al is definitely not bad boy rock star kind of guy. He's just a comedian. Everything I've ever seen about him is he's a pretty normal dude with a just wicked sense of humor. And I've always enjoyed his material. I've always laughed at it. So minimally looking at what he did in that video, somebody out of curiosity might go, black helicopters, Illuminati, New World Order, and get on a search engine and start looking those things up. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Well, here's the thing. I think it's definitely like a sign of, how far the information has come. Like we could look at that, and it's a measurement. So it doesn't matter if it's I don't think as much whether it's a positive thing or a negative thing, or what Weird Al's, what he was trying to accomplish with it. I think it just shows that it's that famous, it's that out there. So I mean, it at least gives you an idea that, how far the information has come from nobody knowing about it. I mean, in 2009, I didn't know so much, and I got turned onto it, and I went down the rabbit hole, and now it's like common knowledge.
Well, that's exactly it. When he was making fun of Michael Jackson in the 80s, he couldn't do a song like this. But today, it's everywhere. So that tells you something, like that, that the concepts have shifted in the public consciousness.
Well, to a degree, but I would argue that what they're doing is by bringing it all out into the open, they're saying, well, what are you going to do about it? This is the reality. What are you going to do about it? They're just like shoving it down your throat.
They do that anyway.
Absolutely.
Well, I understand that.
Katy Perry's the great example I always use. She did a performance on, I believe it was the VMA Awards, for her show, for her video Dark Horse. And the Dark Horse that I believe the other person's name was Juicy J comes out and is identical, and I mean identical, to the Dark Horse of the Apocalypse, which is Death, that's in the Denver airport.
Right. Yeah.
So
exactly.
it's getting to the point of absolute. It's in our face now. If you have eyes to see and ears to hear, they are telling you, yes, we rule you.
Yep. Or how about the not only you mentioned the Denver airport, and the runways are in the shape of a swastika, and all the murals in the airport, and the gargoyles and stuff. But I was going to mention too, how about the Olympic ceremony in I guess it was 2012, and and the whole thing with the 2012, the way they did it, it's spelled Zion.
Yes, I saw that. So it looks to me like it's just a further example of saying, hey, guess who's in control? We are, not you.
Of course, yeah, and at the ritual, or the ceremony, I should say, but it was really a ritual. Like, it was very strange. They, when you understand this stuff, you know what's going on. But basically, it was all these, it was like hospital beds and these like dead babies and these like ghostly nurses, and then they rolled out a huge octopus with its like tentacles wrapping over everything, and it's like, oh my god. I was asking my mom about that, and she's like, yeah, I thought it was a little strange. It's like people like, they're like, it's so weird and bizarre that it's like, it's agitating and irritating to people, but at the same time, they also don't want you to talk about it either.
No, well, this is the thing about the average person, if you want to call them that. I have numerous times pointed out to people when I see the tic-tac-toe crisscrossing chemtrails in the sky that linger for hours.
Oh, sure.
And I point out to people, just nobody I know, just saw someone straight, hey, what do you think of that? And they look up, and like, oh, that's just airplane trails. I'm like, no, that's not airplane trails.
Has anybody watched the History Channel lately? It used to have shows about history on it, and now, I mean, you have, I don't know how many shows about Bigfoot, and like a marathon, like looking into the history of Bigfoot, and on the Discovery Channel too, I believe. So, I mean, you have a nation with the mentality that eats up watching all these shows about Bigfoot, and that kind of lets you know, I mean, who we're dealing with here. So it doesn't surprise me when people deny stuff that's in plain sight, and then they go and they watch a show about Bigfoot because they want to see Bigfoot, and they're hoping that
it just sounds like more distraction. That's all it sounds like. It's just more distraction. They have one reality show on there,
and that's the problem.
Well, what's interesting to me is they have one reality show. I don't recall what its name is on. I don't even know which network it is. If it was History or Discovery, one of those. But they're basically a group of guys that are going out and chasing Bigfoot. They never, ever, ever, ever find anything ever. How do you keep the show going? But people watch it. I mean, obviously the ratings are enough that the show is continuing.
Well, the word entertainment means that you're being detained while something enters you.
Well, I never knew that.
Mm.
Nick, you seem to be a little newer to this. What have you noticed as far as the symbolism and the programming that goes on in the entertainment?
There's certain stuff like the pirate imagery. I think is something that it's like those symbols that I've known since I was a kid, but don't know why I knew them. And then it's like the only organization that's like filled with adults that uses that as their official symbol is like the skull and crossbones or something, or these occult secret societies. Yeah, man. I mean, that's what's crazy is like these signs that I've known my whole life happen to be like the main symbols for these terrible organizations.
So,
like owls. How about all the zombie movies?
Very, very popular these days.
There's Through the Wormhole with Morgan Freeman actually had a show about the science behind the zombie apocalypse and how it could actually happen. A whole hour show with Morgan Freeman on the Science Channel about this is how a zombie apocalypse will happen. It's absolutely possible.
I have to make a point here. When I was being detained, or pretty much it's like you were being arrested on the 5150 in California, which is for potential suicide or whatever, because my ex called my mom and my mom called the cops. In the police station that I was in, they had one of these ZERT, Zombie Emergency Response Team things posted in the police station, and it was like number 54 or whatever it was.
Are you serious?
And to me, yeah. And so I thought that was really strange. And I don't know, you could tell like maybe they kind of thought it was like a joke, but I mean it was in the police station, so they don't post most things in the police station as like really a joke. It's like official. And one of the other things I wanted to mention is also how they're starting to bring all this stuff with aliens into the mainstream, like on TV and stuff like that. Like, well, I don't watch TV, but when I was in the mental hospital, it was always on. And on the like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, they had a whole show where they were alien hunting, and then on another show, which is like it's like the new version of like MTV's like America's Funniest Home Videos, like updated with like I don't know, Justin Bieber was one of the guests and like stuff like that. You know, they do it with like the celebrities, like the teeny bopper celebrities. The guy who was hosting the show, he had a shirt on that had a picture of Ray on it, and it said "Believe."
X-Files.
Yeah.
Well, so do you think it's like a Project Bluebeam, like they're going to unveil in the near future some sort of like false flag alien invasion?
That's possible, but they really can only pull that off on a big scale once, so I would think they're holding that card till they're ready. But by getting it into the mass...
I agree with you.
Right, so when they are ready to really... Because it's going to be a move that will totally befuddle a lot of people. A lot of people are going to be like, oh my God, that this is real? Because from everything I've come to understand, they can pull that off now with holograms. And when
do you guys know... sorry.
Go ahead, Russell.
Yeah, do you guys know about Carol Rosen?
No. Go ahead and explain that.
She worked with Werner von Braun. Anybody can look it up on YouTube. It's called False Flag Alien Invasion, The Last Card, and you can find it under Carol Rosen or whatever. And she basically she talked about how she worked with Werner von Braun, and in his last few years of life, he had a change of heart, and he really made a point to explain to her the agenda and how they were going to use all of this this whole thing with talking about different threats and how we would need space-based weapons, and that ultimately the final card was that they were going to pull a false flag alien invasion to basically implement the New World Order. And there have been many presidents that have alluded to this, and also like Paul Krugman, who's an economist, said, "Oh, it would be really good for our economy if this happened," like all this different stuff. So yeah, it is. They have definitely put it out there, and it is possible. And the biggest thing for people to realize is it's not that we're going to be invaded by aliens; it's that we've already been invaded by aliens. They're already here, and so this is just a huge psyop.
Well, did you notice in the remake of War of the Worlds, the concept was not that they were coming, but they were already here. Waiting. Right. I noticed that was one subtle change, but that was think about the implication of that.
Well, sure, and they were underground. And another movie that I wanted to cite earlier was Minority Report, when we were talking about 1984, right? Pre-crime.
Pre-crime, yes.
Pre-crime. I love that movie, man.
Just think about all these ideas that they're putting out though into the mainstream consciousness.
Well, sure. It's like one of the things that Jordan says is that basically Hollywood does three things. Tells you what our masters have done, what they're doing, and what they plan to do, and we finance it by going to see the movie, and then we're also subtly indoctrinated into the future that they want to create, or the past that they want us to believe.
So it's one big win for them.
Oh, of course. And people love it.
Well, let's also talk about why they do that. They believe in this sympathetic magic thing where they have to use the symbols and create the idea of what it is they want, so when they actually go and do it, it's more powerful.
Well, and not only that, but one of the rules of the Illuminati is that basically they have to on some level or somewhere or in some way tell you what they plan to do, and so that way they can say that they're essentially honoring free will because you've gone along with it willingly. And
right.
So it's sort of, from a karmic sense, it's like it takes some of the pressure off of them because they get people to do it to themselves.
Well, they consider us ignorant, the profane. We don't know what's going on. Look, we told you we were going to do this, and you were okay with it. We put these GMOs out there, yet you eat it. We put fluoride in the water, yet you drink it.
Right, and you never stand up. So I guess it's like you're that's pretty much your vote.
I remember at Walmart, they had water. It was called nursery water, and it was water with fluoride.
Still out there. I just saw it the other day.
Parents, well, check it out though. Like parents, no, because you have to buy baby toothpaste that doesn't have fluoride because the baby's not supposed to swallow even that little bit of toothpaste with fluoride in it. But here's some water, so here's some water for them to guzzle. And people can't put two and two together in this country. I mean, we're dealing with people that, and maybe it's not that they can't think, but it's that they won't think to put these things together. The level of, critical thinking in this country, it disgusts me. Like, you can't follow a simple, logical line to draw a conclusion from A to B. 2 + 2 = 4.
I thought it was 5.
Can't have this little. How about it?
Well, the thing is that, like you said, maybe it's not that they can't see it, or it's just that the implications of seeing it are just too frightening because, there are none so blind as those who choose not to see. And I think really the attitude is just stick your head in the sand. And I think the people that do see it, and this is one of the things that I come across all the time, and I mean the whole New Age movement is propagated by Satanists. And basically one of the tenets of the New Age is that what you resist persists, or what you put your attention into, you strengthen. And so basically people are like, oh, if you look at this stuff, you're giving it power and you're making that your reality and all this different stuff. And it's just totally bogus. It's like, no, because the thing is that what you have to do is you have to light up the darkness, and the way that you light it is by talking about it or researching it or looking at it.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power, and if you're in the dark, it's because you have no knowledge, and so therefore you have no power. And wisdom is knowledge applied.
However, there is
I do have to say on this point, though. I have to say before I get interrupted is that knowing is only half the battle. I kind of get from a lot of what I see on the internet, and people think that knowing and letting other people know is the whole deal.
No, you're absolutely right, because ultimately, like I said, wisdom is knowledge applied, and you can know how to urinate, but if you don't do it, you're going to die. You can know how to drink water, but if you don't do it, you're going to die. You can know how to eat food, but if you don't do it, you're going to die. So the point is that knowing is not enough, and ultimately all this knowledge has to lead to some kind of a collective action where people say no more. We know the truth, and we're not going to put up with it anymore, but that hasn't happened as of yet.
Nick, you were going to say something?
Well, I guess I would just make a further point that one of the things, obviously what we're looking at to a degree is Hegelian dialectic, where, it's problem, reaction, solution, formula, and kind of what David Icke calls the totalitarian tiptoe, in that you basically roll out this stuff slow enough so that people, they don't really see it. And basically, you do one little thing, and you do another little thing, and you do another little thing, and you see what the reaction is, and if there isn't enough pushback, then you just keep rolling out the next thing.
This also goes with their ordo ab chaos.
Right.
Order absolutely. Out of chaos. Cause all the trouble, and then people will demand a solution of you. Right.
Well, and this is, and that's why we always have these false flags. And basically, it's akin to not exactly a metaphor, but how literally you can, if you throw a frog in a pot of boiling water, it will hop out. But if you put a frog in a pot of cold water, it will stay in, and if you turn up the heat slowly, it will literally boil to death, and that's what they're doing to us.
Right.
Yeah, here's what I learned through, I was in unions, and I did volunteer work where I was on committees and things, and you basically have to introduce things to people gradually. If you try and throw a radical idea onto a committee where people get to vote, they're going to shoot it down, and it's out of fear of change. But if you start to just maybe bring up the topic in open forum and talk about it, and then maybe down the road a little bit, once people are comfortable with that, you start with the first small part of the plan. It's a gradual change, and people are more comfortable with that. And by the time you get towards the end of it, it seems the obvious thing to do to everybody.
Right, like it was their idea. Like it was their idea in the first place.
They feel like this is what we've been working on since the beginning, and these are the people that shot it down in the beginning. So I learned that firsthand, and that's what is being done every day, especially in this country. Just the gradual taking away of freedoms, the gradual change of language into laws. Like one of the things that was a big deal was I forget what the Cyberbullying Act they called it, and they were worried about the language in there being able to be abused, And this is only like fringe thinkers that thought this. Yeah, the Cyberbullying Act it was an act because kids were killing themselves. I actually had my hometown of Pittston, Pennsylvania, actually had 2 suicides in a week, and they found out that it was because of bullying. Now, the Cyberbullying Act was proposed because some girl that got popularity that ended up killing herself because of the bullying over social media, and the language in it was really straightforward about being exactly that. And what some of the fringe thinkers in different internet-based news were worried about was that this was a precedent that it was going to set, where next time maybe you strengthen the language, and then the time after that, and it just kind of was getting that foot in the door to be able to take away First Amendment rights. And like I said, if you read the Cyberbullying Act, it seems straightforward, and you would never think that it was, it could be used to totally strip somebody of their First Amendment rights. But it's letting that first step be taken, and then you're on the first step towards a gradual change.
Well,
like now we have out in the European. Yeah, in the European Union, you could be imprisoned for 4 years for Holocaust denial. Now, that doesn't mean you say the Holocaust didn't happen. Like, that would be an obvious one. But if you say, I don't think it was 6 million Jews, you could do 4 years in prison for that. And out here now, 9/11 is a big thing. And if you have that First Amendment right from the Cyberbullying Act, you have that first foot in the door. Well, who's to say that 10 or 20 years down the road, we're not going to be looking at 4-year sentences for saying, I think 9/11 was an inside job?
Well, sure. I wanted to make a point about going back to Nazi Germany. Well, one of the things, first of all, one of the things that Hitler said was basically, if you want to destroy any country, first disarm its citizens, because then they can't stop you. Another thing that they said about the nature of propaganda is that in order for propaganda for it to work successfully, you have to make the lie big, because most people would never think to lie big. And so the bigger the lie, the more believable it is. And another thing that was said in Nazi Germany, I forget specifically who said it, but basically they said, getting the citizens to go to war is easy. All you have to do is basically say that there is some kind of outside threat, and that you denounce anybody who is a pacifist as basically a terrorist, because you're saying, well, you're basically going to make it so that we all get killed.
Right. You don't want to defend the fatherland.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was Hitler that came up with the whole concept of homeland security, and here we go.
That's how I feel about so many people in America. It's like, I'm terrified that you are responsible for my personal freedom, because these bunch of do-nothings that won't put their Starbucks down to stand for their beliefs, how are they going to be willing to do what it takes?
They're not. The problem is, the reality, I should say, is no matter how hard we try, we're not going to be able to save everybody. That's just the facts. Like, there's going to be people who are going to want to keep their head in the sand and go, la, 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 it's not happening. And, we of course want to try and wake up as many people as possible, but I don't think we're going to save everybody.
Yeah, actually, I have a friend from over in Northern Europe, and I was talking to her, and her big idea was just to decide not to participate. And I was like, do you think that the Jews wanted to participate in the Holocaust? Like, that's not even a reasonable idea. She's a good friend and she's beautiful, but you can't change people's minds on some ideas that it's just, you can't just decide not to participate. It's like saying, I don't want to participate in this rape. You don't get to choose if you're being raped. You either fight back or you just lay down and take it.
Well, certainly when it comes to a physical thing, you cannot choose not to participate, because then you're just going to get run over, whatever they're doing to you.
People are choosing not to participate, and like awake people that know they're choosing not to participate. They're anti, any kind of action. And when you say violence, people are terrified. But even activism, stuff that we used to do and not be afraid to do. I posted a petition for people to sign, and somebody actually commented on it like, yeah, and then you get put on a government list. and the FBI comes to your house and questions you. And I was like, it's a petition. You know, like, you're that afraid that you won't sign a petition?
Yeah, you're
like, God.
Yeah. I did a petition too for basically to repeal all the cannabis and hemp laws, and people wouldn't know. And I got like 9 signatures.
You did one on the White House website?
Yeah, the whitehouse.gov, and no one wanted to sign it because they're like, oh, I don't want to go on the list. I don't want to be on the list.
Well, that tells you everything right there.
Hey, so actually, I'm trying to look up right now a petition at whitehouse.gov that I signed that was basically trying to get 144,000 people to welcome the Palladians into, like, I guess, intervening.
That's biblical stuff, man. 144,000, saints going to heaven to sit by Jesus' side and all
that. Is
that
a Jehovah's Witness thing?
Yeah, it's Jehovah's Witnesses, and it sounds like the Palladians are trying to, rope in that that these Palladians that are coming, they're gods. So that's what the Bible is for. So we're gonna show 144,000 of our best to them. It's funny how all these religious concepts, they could never free themselves of one another. I think the only original idea that has been out is probably Scientology, and that's right off the rails. But at least, hey, here's to you for originality,
Well, it was created by a science fiction writer who blatantly said, writing for a penny a word is ridiculous. Make more money by getting everyone to believe in a religion.
Well, and he was also a Satanist too.
He was a pretty bad guy.
Yeah. He was also, it's rumored that he was a child molester, and that's why he took off on his fleet of ships that he bought and sailed off into the ocean, never to return. He just sent people in for supplies when he needed them.
Yeah, after stealing Jack Parsons' girlfriend.
What's appalling to me is that people actually fall for this, knowing that, like, this is the public details about this religion, if you want to call it that, yet people still go for it.
Well, it doesn't...
Well, Tom Cruise is a Scientologist, and so is John Travolta. So who you'd argue with them?
Well, it doesn't even...
They're famous.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, like, what the facts are anymore. I mean, look, you can mention about Project Paperclip to people. First of all, people have never heard of it. Second of all, like, people don't care. You can mention Iran-Contra to people. And people say, well...
Ollie North.
Yeah, they say, well, I don't know about all that.
Well, that's just more deniability. The people are just not wanting to take personal account for themselves. They just want to deny. And again, as we've discussed this evening, they're throwing so much crap out there that things do get convoluted. It gets cloudy. People don't know what to make of things. That's why I usually, when I discuss topics, I try and stick to things that are documented, things that have documented evidence and proof.
Yeah, you start talking about the police setting up zombie squads and stuff, and people view that in a certain way, and it wouldn't even matter if you had proof of something like that. You could, have a videotape where you have 5 zombies being shot by the police, and nobody'd believe it. They'd just think it was fake. So you gotta kind of walk, like, tread softly on a lot of topics.
Well,
like,
sure.
I know that...
Well,
go ahead, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, you didn't. Well, I think I interrupted you, actually. But I was just going to mention, remember that whole story about, like, the people who were taking, like, bath salts and then started, like, eating people? Did you guys hear about that?
Yes.
Yeah, it happened in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That was right. I remember seeing the news on it. The guy took the bath salts. They were both 2 naked guys, and the one was eating the other one's face, and the cops had to put him down. That was no joke, man.
Well, I'm just saying...
You won't catch me doing bath salts.
I'm saying, we're talking about zombies, but, yeah, isn't that what zombies do?
Yeah, they actually, and it's one of the movies, 28 Days Later, it's more like a super rabies kind of virus, and then there was another movie that I can't think of the name of it, but through the wormhole with Morgan Freeman, basically what they were talking about, that it would be something viral that would shut down the higher brain functions and they would just become like mindless, like rabid humans.
Well, sure. There's a million movies like that. Like there was that one that was Resident Evil. It was based off of, like the video game. There's another thing with like a virus, and there's so many movies or video games or everything that talk about like these like post-apocalyptic societies where there's like some virus or some outbreak, or it's like an alien invasion, or there's like a mutation and something goes like horribly wrong, and all of a sudden it's like people having to like fight for survival against like other people, and there's like this crazy like police force, and the military takes over, and there's like martial law, and everyone is like hiding out, and yeah, I mean these are common themes.
And what is it exactly they're trying to tell us with these concepts being put out there?
Get ready.
Yeah, I'd be actually kind of excited if they used zombies. I'm a zombie fan. I'm telling you, I'm ready for a zombie apocalypse.
It'd be fun.
So I think a lot of people would actually be kind of happy that it was zombies.
Do you know?
As opposed to what?
These movies, though, the one thing I've always thought about when I've seen these shows and these movies is that the people aren't realistically responding to if you literally saw a dead body clawing its way towards you, I'm pretty sure you'd freak out a heck of a lot more, at least most people would, than generally happens in these movies or TV shows.
Well, that's why they're movies,
Well, right, exactly. But what I'm saying is if they're trying to depict something, I would think that most people's sense of reality would be snapping at that point.
Well, the thing is that most people's sense of reality is snapping at this point. I mean, people have no basis on what reality actually is. And so the thing is, you never know. People are so desensitized that they don't even believe their own eyes. I mean, you point chemtrails out to people, and they don't know. You tell people about like plain facts, or people's reason is gone. It's like everyone has been almost like lobotomized practically from the fluoride and the food and everything else.
You might be right about that, because the violence that we see in movies for decades now, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse over the years. The things that you would see in a 70s movie, it's that much worse in an 80s movie, and it's that much worse in a 90s movie, and then up to modern times, it's just, they'll show anything now, and people are just kind of seeing these images and sinking in. It's just like, no big deal.
Well, it's the video game culture, and all the games are so violent and everything, and you can kill people remotely with drones and stuff, and really, people are just so desensitized to it.
And those things are going on for real, and no one complains.
Right, and I mean, look at what's happening in the Middle East right now. How like the Israeli genocide of the Palestinians, and people are pro-Israel. They're like, fuck these sand niggers and stuff. It's unbelievable.
I want to chime in on the chemtrails, and I know that a lot of people, it's obvious you totally lose their attention with the chemtrails when you start talking about them spraying nanotechnology, and it's because that is a topic for most people that is just, it's too new. That couldn't happen yet.
Well, they probably don't understand the concept either, don't forget.
So it's over their heads.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of little nuances that will turn people off. And that's one that I'm pointing out here. And I like to point out little things like that, because I think once we get our heads really into all this stuff and we understand these concepts, we kind of talk down to people with a lot of this stuff, and not realizing like where the disconnect is with them. And I think that as the truth movement goes forth, we're going to have to start having a better understanding of where that disconnect is with people and why they're shutting off when we start talking about certain concepts.
Well, the very sad reality is that the dumbing down of society has been going on for decades, and it's gotten to the point where a lot of people are just so into themselves. They're so self-centered that it really just doesn't matter, because they're only about their own self-gratification.
Well, it's a narcissistic world. Everyone's taking selfies and they're on their iPhone or their iPad or the me.
Well, Western culture, yes.
Well, sure. Well, but Eastern culture in another way is like, well, people have no identity. It's like, oh, my family says to do this, and you got to go to school and be a doctor and marry.
You got to pay your student loans. That's one of the biggest things that ropes people in. I mean, they're terrified They can't leave their jobs and go and become be an activist like in the 60s. The people weren't like covered in so much debt from going to college. So these college students would go and their parents paid for college for them or whatever. So stuff was handled, and they could go out and do what they wanted to do with their lives. Now you got to study hard and you got to work 2 jobs because you got to pay off your student loans. And everything's so expensive. So it kind of takes you out of that. I know that I was shut down for a while. I was managing a rent-to-own store out in Chicago, Illinois, and I was working up to 80 hours a week. And when I got home, like, I didn't have time to do a lot of stuff or read a lot of stuff, so I was really disconnected. And I think that really, deals the fatal blow to a lot of people who might otherwise, be active in this stuff because they don't have time for it. They have to tread water in their own life.
Well, that's exactly what they've done, though. They've made things so expensive that you have to work so hard if you want to maintain this traditional American lifestyle of the house, 2 cars and kids and all this stuff. That's why a lot of you see immigrants, even legitimate ones, Mexicans, for example, they'll all live a bunch of people in one house because it's not all about having the biggest bling. They're all about helping each other and having this communal family, which is the way things used to be in America too. Especially in older times, the big farming families and several generations living under one roof.
Well, sure. Like George Carlin said, he said it's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. And ultimately, he talked about how it's a big club and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. And he said it's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with when they tell you what to think, what to believe, and what to buy. He said the table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged, but nobody seems to notice and nobody seems to care. And he basically said, good, hardworking Americans. It doesn't whether it's white collar, blue collar. It doesn't matter what color of shirt you have on. And basically, we're being fucked. And basically.
Or to sum it up with Bill Hicks, you are free to do as we tell you.
Yeah. Now shut up. Eat this. Watch American Gladiators. Go back to sleep, America.
Your government is in control.
Oh God. Sad because it's true, but it's also funny because no one cares.
Well, I think that's where that concept was coming from. Bill Hicks was, almost like from a ironic point of view, pointing all these things out. He was doing it as his shtick, but in reality, the guy knew what was going on, and what he was saying over 20 years ago now is just as true, if not more true, today. And go back and watch those videos of him. He was nailing a lot of stuff, especially at the end of his career.
Back and to the left.
I had one of my jobs that I was at, I had a couple of guys working under me, and the one guy was black, and we were talking about how we got along real well, and it was a team to me. I wasn't one of those guys that abused my employees and thought that I was above them and all this, and I said I still work for the man. And he said to me, "Yeah, we're all niggers now." And I think that really hit the nail on the head. And I always liked, the fact like I couldn't say that, but he was able to say it, and it summed it up in a nutshell.
Yep. Yeah, one of the things Russell Means, he's a Native American activist, he basically said, "Welcome to the reservation. You're the new American Indian."
Yeah.
Well, basically, we're all being taken advantage of now, and nothing is being given to us at this point. If anything, they're taking more away, and the socialized medicine is the next step in how they're going to control us and clamp down, because now they're going to tell us what we can and can't put in our bodies and how we can take care of ourselves.
Obama scam. Yeah, well, that's been the trend for a long time, because at the end of the day, if you don't own your own body, you can't decide how to take care of yourself and what you can eat or what you can drink, or if you want to smoke cigarettes or you want to smoke weed or whatever. It should be a choice in theory. Cigarettes obviously should be growing your own tobacco, not buying from these companies or whatever. But in theory, regardless, even if you want to jump off a bridge, it should be your choice. It's your body, is it? But no, the Rothschilds own you because of the Maritime Admiralty Law and UCC and the whole thing with the birth certificates and Social Security numbers and all of it. It's a mess.
just to kind of back that up, when I was really doing a lot of research, and I believe this was around 2007, finding Jordan Maxwell videos, little short clip that's still very popular today, where they discuss those very topics, and I was like, really? So couldn't find my birth certificate right at hand, but I had my Social Security card on me, so I go on Fidelity.com, I follow the instructions I saw on a website, and
I looked up my stock too.
I found it. It was $17 and some odd cents a share.
Mine's worth more.
Well, probably because your family's worth more.
No, I'm just joking. Well, it doesn't matter. It's not like I own it anyway. That's the crazy thing. It's
well, there's probably if I had to speculate, there's probably grades of stock, and if your family when you're born is worth more money, they probably come out, get put on the world market at a higher value. I would speculate.
It's crazy if you think about it.
Wait, what are you guys talking about?
See, that's what most people think the same thing that you're thinking, Nick. Man, what are you guys talking about? And then they roll, they just their eyes glaze over because they don't care. It doesn't affect them. They can't see it. So,
well, Russell,
I don't know.
You're the new Jordan Maxwell. You're the young Jordan Maxwell up and coming. So why don't you explain to Nick exactly what we're talking about?
Okay. Well,
what's the practical application to this? I mean, that's the thing that I never understood. Like, I've seen the stuff on paper, and I've looked this stuff up and found out, what my worth was, and I just don't understand what the practical application is to this. So if you could hit that while you're talking about it, because that's what I always look for in anything that we're looking into like this. Like, what's the purpose of it? Does this even matter? How does it matter to me? So
sure. Well, I guess it's a huge issue, but at the end of the day, money is basically debt. You have these Federal Reserve notes, which are they're debt notes. On it says this is payable for all debts, public and private. So there's nothing backing the currency. After 1933, this country went broke. That's why we had to have a new deal. And they took all the gold and repriced it. And it ultimately went to the bankers because they were the ones who were loaning money to the country. And so ultimately they said, all right, if you want us to continue financing you, what are you going to put up as collateral? And they said, well, we're going to put up the people because that's all they had left. And so pretty much we were all sold into slavery before we were born. And the thing is that there are two kinds of law. There is the law of the land, which changes depending on where you go. And then there's the law of the water, which is banking law. It's maritime law. And basically, kind of how Jordan explained it is like, well, how can America trust China to do business with them, or any country to do business with another country? There has to be some kind of a law that applies across the whole world, and that's what UCC is, which is Uniform Commercial Code, which was basically established under Caesar. And pretty much, the thing is that when a ship pulls into harbor, it pulls into its berth. That's BERTH, and it pulls into the dock, where it unloads and delivers its product. And that's why you're born in a delivery room and you have a dock tour and you are birthed and you're basically a maritime admiralty product, and your body literally is incorporated and turned into a bond. And there's this whole thing now about how corporations are people. And, well, virtually people are also corporations. And that's why any kind of financial document you have, it's always in all capital letters, because what that represents is it's a corporation. And so I guess going back to the practical application of this is it's just showing you how literally the monetary system is enslaving us. And realistically, people believe that we need money. And the thing is that we don't really need money per se. I mean, I understand the whole concept of it and how it can maybe like make sense, but the problem is that as long as we have a monetary system, we'll never be free, because somebody's always going to be in control of it and use it to their advantage. And ultimately, perhaps in a resource-based economy, or if we could basically get people to kind of work together, and everybody would chip in and contribute in some way, or have some kind of a skill or whatever, I mean, how did the Native Americans live before we came over? They sort of seemed to be doing all right before we rolled over with our money and our muskets and smallpox blankets and killed all the buffalo and put them all into camps.
I want to jump in on corporations being a person, it's not new. There's actually there's a Canadian documentary called The Corporation that is fantastic that explains that, and it shows you the way that corporations basically control our government through lobbying and basically owning senators. And it's an incredible movie. If you haven't seen it, I would definitely look it up. I'm not sure if you can get it on Netflix or if you'd have to do an internet search and actually find it elsewhere. But if you haven't seen The Corporation, you must.
Well, the idea behind all this is that you're a corporation and this is how they do business. So everyone's doing business with each other through these corporate identities, and that's how they control you.
Right. And one of the things...
I think it's more. I just want to stop you there because it's more that the people who work for the corporation are protected. That's why they don't go to jail when it comes to things like this, because the corporation is the person, and the corporation has to be punished, and the corporation is responsible. Now, it's not a real thing. It's an idea, but it has person status according to the law. And that's why when you kill 100,000 people, or I don't even remember how many GM has killed or put in danger, at least. But it's not the people who are running the show at the time don't have to face any consequences. The corporation gets fined rather than them going to jail, and that's what the big deal is about. A corporation being a person, and the corporations they have been trying and succeeding at in courts, fighting for human rights in certain aspects, like things that only people are supposed to have as a privilege. Like the corporations are getting that, and you could Google that and see some of the examples. But I'll stop there. You guys.
We've had a good conversation for over an hour now. I think we got a lot of good information out there. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. This is Secrets of Saturn. I'll see you again.